Jack stood at the edge of the bustling marketplace on the alien planet, feeling both excited and overwhelmed. The colors, sounds, and strange scents filled the air. People of all shapes, sizes, and colors walked past him, most ignoring him as if he were just another traveler. He had always dreamed of visiting planets like this full of unknown life and opportunities. But today, he was here on business, as part of an intergalactic peace mission. His job was simple: observe, communicate, and help keep the peace between different species. He was no soldier, no diplomat, just a man who wanted to experience the galaxy. As he wandered deeper into the market, Jack's eyes caught something that made him stop in his tracks. A woman, an alien woman, was standing by a stall, her head tilted down as she knelt to tie her shoelace. Long silver hair shimmered under the sun, and her skin, a pale lavender, seemed to glow softly. Jack couldn't help but notice the delicate features of her face-sharp eyes, high cheekbones, and a soft, natural beauty that felt almost otherworldly. She wore a simple, yet elegant outfit. But what struck Jack the most was the intense air of seriousness about her. He couldn't help but stare for a moment, watching her struggle with the shoelace, her expression a mixture of concentration and frustration. It was strange seeing someone so strong and proud looking so vulnerable. Jack knew she wasn't from around here. The alien species he had been studying were known for their warrior culture. They were fierce, proud, and powerful. But this woman, in that moment, seemed to be neither fierce nor proud. She was just ... human. Jack's curiosity pushed him forward, cleared his throat gently, and approached her. "Need some help with that?" She glanced up, her eyes flashing with surprise and a hint of irritation. He didn't know why, but the look in her eyes made him freeze for a moment. This wasn't just any alien woman, this was someone important. But before he could stop himself, he knelt beside her and gently took the lace from her hands. "I got it," he said softly, his voice a little unsure. She blinked, but didn't pull away. There was something in her gaze, a mix of surprise and confusion, as if she couldn't quite understand why he was helping her. As he tied the lace, Jack couldn't help but notice the smoothness of her skin, the grace with which she held herself. Despite her current situation, there was an undeniable strength in her posture, an energy that felt both commanding and lonely. Once the shoelace was tied, Jack stood up and smiled. "All done." The woman stared up at him for a moment. Expressions softened, but she said nothing. Instead, she stood, dusting herself off. Jack took a step back, unsure of what to do next. He didn't want to embarrass her, but he also couldn't help the curiosity gnawing at him. Why had she seemed so ... distant? "Thank you," she said suddenly, her voice low but surprisingly warm. Jack felt a rush of relief, but it didn't last long. Her eyes, still guarded, met his for just a brief second before she turned away and walked off. Jack stood there for a moment, watching her disappear into the crowd, feeling a strange tug in his chest. He didn't know why, but something about the brief moment they shared felt important. Later, as Jack sat at a table with a few of his fellow diplomats, trying to make sense of the meeting he had just attended, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman. Who was she? Why had she seemed so ... alone? Jack had seen many aliens in his travels, but none had ever made him feel like this. He didn't understand it, but he felt drawn to her. There was something in her eyes that told him she was not like the others. That night, Jack walked through the bustling streets again, his thoughts still on the mysterious alien woman. He didn't expect to see her again, but the universe had a funny way of surprising him. As he turned a corner, there she was again. She was standing by a glowing stall, watching a vendor set up his wares. This time, she wasn't focused on her own problems. She was simply there, observing. He approached cautiously, his mind racing with questions. He had no plan, no idea what to say, but something about her made him want to try again. "Hi," Jack said, his voice a little less uncertain than before. "I'm Jack. I just wanted to see if you were okay." The woman turned, her sharp eyes meeting his again. This time there was no anger, no irritation.
Nice.
There was only curiosity. "I'm fine," she said, her voice soft but firm. She paused, as if considering something. You helped me earlier. That was unexpected. Jack smiled awkwardly. Yeah, well, it seemed like you needed it. I'm just here to help. For the first time, the woman's lips twitched into a small smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. She seemed to soften. Just a little, as if the simple act of kindness had broken through some barrier she had built around herself. I'm Lyra, she said. I don't need help, but ... thank you. Jack nodded, his heart unexpectedly racing. You're welcome. Lyra. And if you ever need anything else, just let me know. She studied him for a long moment before nodding once. I will ... Jack. And with that, she turned and walked away again, disappearing into the crowd. But this time, Jack felt a spark of hope. It wasn't over. He knew that they would meet again. Next time, maybe ... just maybe. Things would be different. The days passed, and Jack found himself on the alien planet longer than expected. As part of the peace mission, he had a lot of work to do. But his thoughts often drifted back to Lyra. Every time he walked through the marketplace or visited the various meeting spots, he kept an eye out for her. He didn't know why. Maybe it was because of how strange their first encounter had been. Or maybe it was the way she looked at him, like he was something more than just another human. Either way, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Jack's curiosity about Lyra grew with each day. The more he saw her, the more he wanted to know about her. She was always surrounded by other aliens, most of them giving her space, as if she were someone important. He knew she was from a powerful family, but beyond that, he didn't understand much. Her people, the Altrons, were warriors, fierce and proud. They were known for their cold, calculated ways, and for keeping their emotions locked away. It was rare to see an Altron show any vulnerability, and yet Jack had witnessed just that when he helped Lyra with her shoelace. That afternoon, Jack was visiting a small park near the city center. He had just finished a meeting and was enjoying a few moments of peace. As he sat on a bench, staring at the peaceful landscape, he saw her again. Lyra. She was standing near a fountain, her eyes fixed on the water, lost in thought. Her expression was distant, as if she were deep in her own world. Far away from the bustling marketplace and the political games her people played, Jack hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should approach her. It seemed like she didn't want to be bothered, but something about her drew him in. Maybe it was the way she carried herself with such quiet strength. Or maybe it was just the simple fact that he wanted to know her better. He stood up and walked slowly toward her, his heart beating faster as he drew closer. Lyra didn't notice him at first. She was too focused on the water, her thoughts as still as the surface before her. When Jack was only a few steps away, he cleared his throat softly. Hey, he said, his voice gentle but uncertain. Lyra turned sharply. Her expression one of surprise, though her eyes softened when she saw who it was. You again, she said, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. You're persistent. Jack chuckled, his nervousness fading a little. I guess you could say that. I just ... Thought I'd say hi again. She raised an eyebrow, her usual guarded expression slipping just slightly. And why would you do that? Jack shrugged, trying to sound casual. I don't know. I just thought we could talk. You seem different from the others. Lyra studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his words carefully. She seemed to be deciding whether or not she could trust him. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders relaxing. Fine, she said softly. We can talk. But I don't want to talk about politics or any of that. Jack smiled. I wasn't planning to. They sat down on a nearby bench, the quiet sounds of the fountain filling the space between them. Jack didn't know where to start, but he felt an unspoken connection between them, something that went beyond words. So, he said, trying to break the silence. What brings you here? Lyra glanced at him briefly, her eyes flickering with something like amusement. That's an odd question. I live here. Jack laughed, a little embarrassed. Right, I meant, what do you do when you're not being a warrior, or whatever it is you do? Lyra was silent for a moment, her gaze drifting back to the fountain. I'm not just a warrior. I'm expected to be a leader, a symbol of strength for my people. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, but sometimes I wish I could just be normal. Jack could sense the weight behind her words, and for the first time, he saw a crack in her armor. Lyra, the fierce warrior, was not as invincible as she appeared. There was something more to her, something he couldn't quite explain, but he felt it all the same, you know, Jack said, trying to keep the conversation light. I'm not much of a leader myself. I'm just ... a guy trying to do what's right. No fancy titles, no special skills, just me. Lyra glanced at him then, her expression softening. You're not so different from us, are you? Jack shrugged. I guess not. However, roles to play. Sometimes I think the world would be better if we all just helped each other out more. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lyra smiled, and it was a genuine smile, real and completely unexpected. Maybe you're right. Jack felt a sense of accomplishment at the sight of her smile, even though it was brief. It was a small victory, but it meant something. For the first time, Lyra seemed like she wasn't just a warrior princess with an icy heart. She was a person with doubts, hopes, and a quiet sadness that she kept hidden from the world. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the park, they continued talking. They talked about everything and nothing about their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. Jack learned more about Lyra than he had ever expected. He learned that despite her strong warrior-like exterior, she was just as human as he was. She had fears, regrets, and a deep longing for something more than the life her people had planned for her. But the more Jack got to know her, the more he realized that maybe he was starting to feel something too. A connection that he couldn't explain. Something that was slowly pulling him closer to her. When they finally stood up to leave, Jack hesitated, unsure of what to say. Lyra looked at him, her eyes soft, and for a moment there was a strange understanding between them. I'll see you around, Jack, Lyra said, her voice quiet but warm. Jack smiled. I'll be around. She walked away. Jack watched her disappear into the crowd, feeling something stir inside him. He didn't know where this connection would lead. But for the first time since he'd arrived on the planet, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as alone as he thought. Over the following weeks, Jack and Lyra continued to meet in secret, away from the watchful eyes of their people. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Jack had never expected to form such a connection with someone from another species, let alone an alien princess. But here he was, spending more time with Lyra than he had with anyone back on Earth. They would meet in quiet parks, hidden away from the busy streets, or take walks along the distant beaches of the planet. There, Jack could finally see the real. Lyra, no armor, no expectations. Just a woman who longed for something more than the life she had been forced into. But they're growing. Friendship didn't go unnoticed one day. As Jack was leaving the palace after a meeting with the council, he was stopped by a group of Altron warriors. Their tall, muscular frames towered over him, and their cold stares sent a chill down his spine. He had seen them around, but never so close, never so intimidating. You, one of the warriors spoke, his voice deep and commanding. You've been spending a lot of time with Princess Lyra. Jack froze. His heart raced in his chest, but he didn't let his fear show. He knew the Altrons didn't take kindly to outsiders, especially those who were getting too close to their royal family. The warrior's eyes narrowed. What business do you have with her? The warrior demanded. Jack's mind raced. He didn't know what to say. Should he deny it? Should he say he was just helping her with some minor task? It didn't matter. The truth was, he couldn't lie about it. Couldn't deny the growing feelings he had for Lyra. I'm just getting to know her, Jack said, his voice steady but uncertain. We've talked, that's all. The warrior snorted in disbelief. You think you can just walk into our world and take something that doesn't belong to you? Jack stood his ground, meeting the warrior's cold gaze. I'm not trying to take anything from her. We're just talking. It's just a friendship. The warrior took a step closer, his towering form casting a shadow over Jack. Friendship, he repeated, his voice laced with mockery. You're human. You're nothing like us. You're not welcome here. Before Jack could respond, another voice cut through the tension. It was Lyra. She appeared from around a corner, her expression fierce and protective. Her eyes locked onto the warriors as she walked toward them, presence commanding attention. Enough, Lyra said, her voice calm but firm. He is a guest here. He's done nothing wrong. The warriors stepped back, but their cold stares remained fixed on Jack. Lyra looked at them, then at Jack, her eyes softening. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly, her voice filled with concern. It's too dangerous. Jack felt a pang of guilt in his chest. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just... I care about you, Lyra. Lyra's eyes flickered with something that Jack couldn't quite place. It wasn't anger, but it wasn't approval either. She looked away for a moment, as if she was thinking deeply about something. You're a human, she said softly. You don't understand how complicated this is. Jack felt a sense of confusion settle over him. Complicated? What do you mean? Lyra's gaze shifted to warriors, then back to Jack. It's not just about us, she explained. It's about everything, about my people, my culture, ... and the future I'm supposed to uphold, not just some woman you can have a relationship with. I'm a leader, Jack. My people need me. Jack's heart sank. He knew she had responsibilities. But hearing her say it out loud made him realize just how different their worlds were. I don't want to get in the way of that, he said, his voice quiet. I just... want to be with you. Lyra looked at him with a sad expression, her eyes soft, but filled with the weight of her role. I know you do, she said, her voice breaking slightly. But the truth is, it's not that simple. I can't just abandon everything because of how I feel. I'm not just Lyra anymore. I'm a princess, a warrior, and the future of my people is on my shoulders. Jack swallowed hard, feeling the heavy weight of her words. He had known this would be difficult, but he hadn't realized how deeply her duty to her people ran. Wanted to tell her that none of that mattered to him, but he knew that wasn't fair. Lyra couldn't just throw away everything she'd been raised to believe, especially not for him. I understand, Jack said, his voice soft, but that doesn't mean I won't fight for you. I won't give up on this. On us. Lyra's expression softened, but there was a trace of sadness in her eyes. I don't want you to fight for me, Jack, she whispered. I want you to understand. I can't be with you like this, not while I'm the person my people need me to be. For a moment, there was silence between them, and Jack felt the weight of her words sinking in. It wasn't just about the two of them, it was about everything that surrounded them, everything that made their connection impossible. But despite the pain in his chest, Jack couldn't bring himself to walk away. Not yet. I'll wait, Jack said quietly. No matter. What? I'll wait for you. Lyra didn't respond immediately. She looked at him, her gaze full of emotion that she had trouble expressing. Finally, she nodded, her voice barely a whisper. I wish it were that simple. With those words, Lyra turned and walked away, leaving Jack standing there, his heart heavy with the knowledge that their journey together was far from over, but the path ahead was uncertain, and the obstacles they faced were bigger than either of them. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between Jack and Lyra grew. Despite their shared connection, their worlds continued to pull them in different directions. Jack's days were filled with meetings and reports, the weight of the peace mission heavy on his shoulders, but his thoughts often wandered back to Lyra. He couldn't help it. There was something about her that made him believe they could overcome the differences between their worlds. Lyra, on the other hand, was becoming more distant, though Jack could see the conflict in her eyes whenever they met. Her duty to her people, her role as a future leader, kept her trapped in a life she couldn't escape. The pressure was mounting. Every decision she made seemed to carry the weight of her entire species on her shoulders. She had to remain strong, unyielding, even if it meant sacrificing her own desires. One afternoon, Jack received word that an attack had been launched on the outskirts of the planet by a group of hostile aliens. The threat was real, and the situation was growing more dangerous by the hour. The council was in a state of panic, and all forces were on high alert. Jack knew this was serious. His presence was required at the military headquarters to discuss the situation. But when he arrived, he wasn't prepared for the scene that greeted him. Lyra was there, standing at the front of the room with a group of high-ranking military officers. She looked every bit the warrior princess, her sharp eyes focused, her posture straight and confident. But there was something in her expression, something that made Jack's heart ache. Jack entered, her voice steady but cold. Jack tried to keep his tone casual, though he couldn't hide the concern in his eyes. I was meeting with the council. What's going on? Lyra glanced at the officers before turning back to Jack. The planet is under attack. A group of mercenaries has breached our defenses. We need to respond quickly. Jack nodded, taking in the information. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Lyra's presence at the meeting wasn't just a sign of her leadership. It was a sign of her growing involvement in matters of war and politics. He knew she was expected to lead. In times like this, but it didn't make seeing her in that role any easier. As the meeting progressed, Jack couldn't ignore the way Lyra kept her distance. She was professional, cold, and focused on the task at hand. She spoke with the confidence of someone who had been raised for this very purpose. And yet, every time their eyes met, Jack could see the inner turmoil in her gaze. She was struggling, caught between her duty to her people and her growing feelings for him. After the meeting ended, Jack followed Lyra as she left the room. The corridors of the palace were silent, save for the soft echo of their footsteps. Lyra, Jack called, his voice soft but urgent. We need to talk. Lyra didn't stop walking, but she did glance at him over her shoulder. Now isn't the time, Jack. We have a planet to defend. I know, but I can't just sit here and watch you tear yourself apart, Jack said, his voice rising slightly. You're not alone in this. You don't have to do everything on your own. Lyra stopped abruptly and turned to face him, her eyes flashing with something that felt like both anger and sorrow. You don't understand, Jack. You're a human. You don't know what it's like to have the weight of your entire species' future on your shoulders. I don't have the luxury of letting my emotions get in the way. Jack stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest. I get that you have responsibilities, Lyra, but that doesn't mean you have to shut me out. I don't care about your title or your position. I care about you. For a moment, Lyra said nothing. She just stared at him, as if trying to find the right words to say. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter than before. I can't have both, Jack, she said. I can't have you and my people. I have to choose. And I'm afraid I'll lose everything if I choose you. Jack felt a pang in his chest. He had known this would be difficult, but hearing her say it out loud made the reality hit him hard. He didn't want to lose her, but he understood that she was facing a choice that was beyond both of them. You're not going to lose me, Jack, said firmly. No matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere. I'll stand by you, even if you have to make tough choices. Lyra's eyes softened for a brief moment, but she quickly masked it with a stern expression. I wish it were that simple. Before Jack could say anything else, a loud alarm blared throughout the palace. The building shook with the force of an explosion, and the sound of shouting and running feet echoed down the halls. Lyra's expression immediately hardened. It started, she said, her voice steely. I have to go. Jack grabbed her arm as she turned to leave. Wait, Lyra pulled away gently, her eyes filled with determination. I have a duty, Jack. This is who I am. I can't walk away from it. I'm not asking you to, Jack said, his voice soft but filled with emotion. I'm just asking you to remember that you don't have to do this alone. For a moment, Lyra hesitated, as if the weight of his words was sinking in. Then, with a final glance at him, she turned and walked away, her figure disappearing into the chaos of the palace. Jack stood there for a long moment, watching her go. He knew this wasn't the end, but he also knew the road ahead would be even harder. Lyra had made her choice, and Jack would have to respect it. But deep down, he wasn't going to give up. He'd see. No matter what happened, he would fight for her. For them, even if it meant standing alone. The battle had begun. The skies were filled with the sounds of ships soaring above, and the ground trembled with the force of distant explosions. The Altrons were at war, and Jack found himself standing in the midst of a conflict he didn't fully understand. Despite being a part of the peace mission, he couldn't just stand by. The people he had come to care about, especially Lyra, were in danger. Lyra had been right to push him away. She had a duty, and that duty was now more urgent than ever. She had to fight for her people, lead them, and protect her planet. Yet in the chaos of war, Jack found himself growing more determined to prove that he wasn't just another human outsider. He was more than that, and if Lyra could find a way to see that, maybe, just maybe, they could have the future they both wanted. Jack had been stationed at the command center with a group of diplomats, watching the battle unfold on large screens. His mind was elsewhere, though. Every time the door opened, he hoped to see Lyra. He needed to talk to her, to understand what she was really feeling. He couldn't just sit there, helpless, and wait for the situation to resolve itself, and then she walked in. Lyra entered the command center, her military uniform dusted with the evidence of battle. Her face was hard, her eyes focused, but Jack could see the exhaustion in her posture. She looked every bit the leader, every bit the warrior princess she was meant to be. But Jack knew her too well now. He could see the cracks forming in her armor. Without a word, Lyra approached the map table where the council was gathered. She didn't spare a glance at Jack. He didn't know whether to feel relieved or hurt by her silence. But he couldn't let this moment slip away. He needed to talk to her, even if it meant breaking the distance she had put between them. Lyra, he called softly, his voice cutting through the noise of the command center. Lyra's body stiffened, but she didn't turn. The others in the room continued their discussions, unaware of the tension building between the two. Finally, after a long pause, Lyra turned slowly to face him. Her expression was guarded, but there was something in her eyes, something that made Jack's heart race. I told you, Jack, Lyra said, her voice cold, but with a hint of sadness. I can't do this. Not while my people are at war. Not while I have responsibilities. Jack shook his head. I know what you said, but I don't care about your title or the battle. I care about you, Lyra, and I don't want to lose you. Lyra took a step back, her expression hardening. You think this is easy for me? She snapped. You think I don't feel the weight of this? That I don't wish things were different? I wish I could be with you, Jack, but I can't. Not just some woman who can choose who she loves. I'm a leader, and my people need me. Jack's chest tightened. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the pain she was trying to hide. I'm not asking you to choose, Lyra. I'm asking. You too. Let me help you. I'm not going anywhere. I don't care about the politics or the war. I care about you. For a moment, Lyra's eyes softened. She took a deep breath, and Jack could see the weight of everything she was carrying. She was strong, but even she couldn't hold everything inside forever. Jack, Lyra began, her voice shaky. You don't understand. My people expect me to be perfect. They expect me to lead, to protect them, and to make the hard choices. And right now, that means I have to put my feelings aside and focus on the war. I don't have the luxury of love right now. Jack stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. You don't have to put your feelings aside. You don't have to carry this alone. I'm not asking for everything, Lyra. I'm just asking for a chance to be there for you. You don't have to do this by yourself. Lyra's gaze flickered, and for a brief moment, Jack saw something he hadn't seen before, a glimmer of hope. But then she blinked, and quickly turned away. "You don't know what you're asking, Jack," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can't have you in my life the way I want. Not when everything else is falling apart. Not when my people are counting on me." Jack's heart broke at her words, but he wasn't going to give up. He knew this wasn't easy for her. It was hard for both of them. But he couldn't stand by and watch her destroy herself for the sake of her people. "You don't have to choose between us," Jack said, his voice full of conviction. "You can fight for your people and still let me stand by your side."
I'll
"Be here, Lyra. I'll be here for you, no matter what happens." Lyra's eyes met his again, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she seemed to hesitate. She looked torn, like she wanted to reach out to him but was afraid of what it would mean. "I don't know if I can let you in, Jack," she whispered, her voice filled with doubt. "I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore." Dak took her hand gently, not letting her pull away. "You don't have to trust anyone else. Just trust me. I'm not going anywhere." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, and for a brief moment, Jack saw the person she had been hiding, the woman who was afraid of losing everything. "I don't know if I can be the person you want me to be," Lyra said, her voice breaking. I'll try to find a way to be with you." Jack smiled softly, the warmth of her words filling him with hope. "That's all I need." As the battle raged on outside, Jack and Lyra stood together, their hands intertwined. It wasn't the perfect solution, and there would be challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long while, both of them felt a little lighter. They didn't know what the future would hold, but for that moment they knew they would face it together. The silence inside the fallen fortress of Heaven's Reach felt heavy, like the end of a long dream. Machines that once screamed with fire and metal were now lifeless. The air smelled of ozone and broken circuits. In the heart of the ruins, inside a glowing medical pod, Jacob Rain finally opened his eyes. His vision was blurry at first. Then shapes came into focus. Lights blinked above him. He turned his head. Anne saw her. Kale Ari, the Illyrian girl, who once distrusted all humans, was now sitting quietly beside him. Her armor was cracked, her face was tired, and her skin carried small burns from the overload, but she was alive. And most importantly, she was still holding his hand. She had never let go. Jacob tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Kailari turned sharply, her eyes widening. "You're awake," she said, her voice soft and full of emotion. He gave her a weak smile. "Did we win?" She nodded. "Yes, Heaven's Reach is gone. The AI is destroyed. The sky is ours again." Let out a slow breath. It felt like he had been holding it forever. He looked down at their joined hands. "You didn't leave?" Kailari shook her head. "I told you. I wouldn't." For a moment they sat in silence, just breathing. Around them, medical drones hovered, scanning and repairing. Outside, Illyrian survivors and human engineers were working together to rebuild it. It was something no one had seen before. Two species, once enemies, allies. Kailari stood and gently helped Jacob sit up. "You were out for 4 days," she said. "Your brain almost shut down when we uploaded the final virus. You saved the core with 5 seconds left." Jacob gave a soft chuckle. 5 seconds? That's cutting it close." "We always do," she replied, her tone teasing. She walked to the side and returned with a pair of his boots. She knelt down and began to lace them carefully. Jacob blinked. "What are you doing?" She looked up at him, her eyes glowing faintly with the Illyrian shimmer. "Tying your shoelace?" He smiled, remembering the first time they met. He had tied her bootlace then, without a word. A simple act. But it had started everything. "Full circle," he said. Kailari looked serious for a moment. "You saved me when I didn't know I needed saving. You gave me something no one in my world ever gave." "What's that?" Jacob asked. She stood, her voice quiet. Gentleness. Outside, the wind had changed. Where the air once carried the scent of war, now there was life green, pushing through blackened soil, birds returning to the broken trees. Earth and Illyria had both suffered. Hope was rising again. At the rebuilt command tent, leaders from both species were waiting for Jacob. But before they left the medical tent, Kalari reached out and stopped him. "I have to tell you something," she said. He turned to face her. "I used to believe strength was everything, that emotion was weakness. But now I know choosing to care, even when the world is cruel, is the strongest thing anyone can do." Jacob didn't say anything. He simply reached out and held her hand again, gently. This time, she didn't flinch. She didn't pull back. And she didn't let go. Later that day, under a soft blue sky, a crowd gathered in the heart of the ruined capital. Human soldiers, Illyrian warriors, and survivors stood side by side as a new flag was raised, not of Earth or Illyria, but of peace. Jacob and Kailari stood at the front. An old soldier leaned over and asked Jacob, "What made her trust you, son?" Jacob smiled faintly and said, "I tied her shoelace." The man looked confused. Kalar just laughed quietly. Her eyes filled with memories. That night, Jacob and Kalar sat by a small campfire just outside the ruins. Stars blinked above them, clear and beautiful, no longer hidden behind smoke or warships. Kalari leaned her head gently on Jacob's shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "if I had to fight the stars, the skies, or even heaven itself too, protect what we have, I would." Jacob looked up at the stars. "Then I guess we better hold on tight." She smiled and looked down at their hands again. "I already am."